Welcome and welcome back to the Light Renegades. My name is Star. Thank you so much for joining me today, everyone. I'm going to have to stick a massive trigger warning on today's message, and I want to start by saying this is not going to be everyone's path. This is not going to be an expression that I'm saying that this is happening. This is what is happening to everyone out there. However, I'm being told that this is very much the truth of my life and my expression and what it's meant for me dealing with this lifetime. And I think I was really hesitant to put this out there into the collective, into this expression, because I know that some will not have the same views as me, and that's okay. But I want to say that this has been my truth, and I thought that it was really important to start sharing that in the here and now. And Teams of Light have definitely been pushing me towards sharing a lot more of myself and my journey and what it's meant for me to be here, because I think it's going to help some truly understand why I've been placed here, what I've been doing, and what it's meant for me to be living this lifetime and this expression, and what it takes sometimes to be able to live the lifestyle that I have been living in communication with such beings, and all of my expression here. Because I think sometimes I feel a lot of backlash from people trying to say, why do you experience this, why do you experience that? But I think people don't see what happens behind the scenes in order for me to be able to be experiencing everything that I've experienced. And sometimes I have wished this wasn't my path, because it's been incredibly challenging, it's been incredibly painful, but at the same time I know that this is exactly why I'm supposed to be here. So I want to say, please come with an open mind. Please be thoughtful when you are sharing in the comments, because also we don't want this to be a triggering space for other people. And I know that this might be something that others want to be speaking upon, but I think we just have to be very careful with what we're sharing, because it's a very sensitive topic. So I'm going to be talking about EDs today and what that's meant for me this lifetime. And I think that I have to go back in time with you all, and I have to share something that, when I've looked back at it now, I've really had to laugh at myself, because I can totally see where I was just really struggling to be human here. And when I was younger, I remember going to the doctors for a very strange reason, because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't exist, because I just felt very aware of what I was seeing with my eyes, and I would see little glimmers and sparkles and lights and all sorts of things, and I kept going back to the doctors time and time again. I said there must be something wrong, because I keep seeing all of these things. And I remember the doctor very specifically saying to me that I was just focusing too much on that which everyone else experiences, and I do think to some degree that I was just hyper fixating on what I could actually see within the lens of my eye. But at the same time, now knowing what I know, I think perhaps was I seeing other things that not everyone was capable of seeing back then. And I had a real difficult time with my body. I've had a real difficult time with my body the entirety of my life, which is what I'm going to be sharing about today. But I remember being young very specifically and just wanting to roll my ankles a lot in bed. So this meant that I wouldn't sleep, because I'd be thinking about my ankles and why I needed to roll them, and feeling like I needed to stretch my body, my bones a lot in this path, in this journey. And we all go through these growing pains as we do, we get taller, all of that stuff. But it was just like my body just didn't feel like mine for a lot of the aspects of my life. And this is why I'm diving deep in EDs today, because Teams of Light really wanted me to put forward an expression that has been my truth. This is why I said it's not going to be for everyone, but this is why I went through the aspects that I did in terms of my EDs this lifetime. And Teams of Light have said to me that I was here to process a lot of this dense and dark energy that we've been living through with the negative reptilian order. And if you have no idea what that means, I'm going to suggest you pause here and partake in a little bit of research, otherwise this isn't going to make a lot of sense to you. So what happened is that when I started to make that shift into puberty, in which we've told has been the master's eye somewhere, this came through as an expression with Shauna L. Francis's videos, and something that I've been told behind the scenes too. This is when you can either slip into this aspect of really delving into this negative reptilian essence or not. And what I was understanding was that in previous lifetimes, I wouldn't say vampiric, I do have vampiric energy. I've just been speaking with Mr. C. I have vampiric energy, but I also have reptilian blood within my bloodline too. So it's been an interesting experience to see that I had to go through this expression because of my my reptilian energy somewhere. And I remember being a teenager and going through puberty, and I want to say at that exact time, this is when my ED started to hit for me, and I couldn't see the exact expression when, I couldn't remember the exact expression when that happened, but I remember feeling like I just two aspects stepped forward. So a very human aspect is that I think I was just very aware of how much my body was changing and becoming a woman, that was something that I didn't feel in the capabilities to be able to be expressing in that moment. And I realize now that I put out such a strong vibration of energy that I just felt all of these things, and I experienced quite a lot in that time, which made me shrink into this expression. But also, I was supposed to shrink into this expression and be there because I was harboring this negative reptilian energy somewhere and transmuting this for humanity. But what played out was just very, very, very extreme expressions. And, you know, I came very, very, very close to the wire in all of this, to the point where it was an expression of, if you don't eat now, you are going to die. We're going to have to hospitalize you for some time. And, you know, when I think back of what that put my family through, what pressure that put a lot of people around me through, you know, I wish that I could do that time again, because I knew that I hurt many in that time. I pushed a lot of people away. I made some, you know, terrible, terrible decisions, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, because I just didn't know how to receive love. I didn't know how to respond to life in that way. I remember I was having time off school. I went back again, had time off, went back again, time off. So it was a miraculous expression to me that I passed all of my exams. And this has been something that has been through the entirety of my life up until, you know, the most recent years, when I realized that I could eat something and not feel guilty. So I've been playing out a very 3D aspect of, you know, having ED somewhere, but also I knew deep down, I went to therapy for this for a long period of my life. So I was in therapy from maybe when I was about 12 years old, I want to say, a ballpark figure. So this is why I knew on this path that my mind is good, everyone, by the way, because I've been in therapy for real long times of my life. So I thought when all of this happened, I was like, no, like, I know my mind is good. I've been in therapy for a real long time and I understand myself, you know? And I remember going for therapy specifically, and time again, they would tell me reasons why, you know, this might be going on and what I was experiencing and what that might mean for me and why it's playing out in this expression of having an ED, and all of these things. And I remember some things coming in and them hitting me and me thinking, okay, yeah, that's definitely something that I know I need to work on, and working on those things. But there was still just this expression that I thought, that's not it. And sometimes things would come forward and I'd be like, that's not it, that's not it. And I would feel in the core of me that it just wasn't something that they were understanding and that I could put into words. And it's so interesting now that I look back on it. Like, it like blows my mind, because I remember going to a very specific therapist. It was absolutely brilliant, and she was someone that really helped me. I've got full body shivers at this. Yeah, thank you so much to you, if you do end up watching this for some way somehow. But they have started to help me understand my emotions as energy, and I think this was the start of my understanding my energetic body in that expression. They helped me to understand what was going on for me. They said, you know, what does that feel like? What does that look like for you? And I remember so specifically of drawing an expression of a being, and it was like the Grim Reaper, and I just said, I feel like something has a hold over me and I don't know how to let it go. And this is what it felt like to me, to try and put into words what it's felt like to be in a different vibration for the entirety of my life. It feels like as soon as I hit puberty, it was like this weighted blanket was on me, and I just couldn't find a way out. I remember sitting at school and just looking around and thinking, I'm not experiencing the same thing that everyone else is experiencing. And it's interesting looking back now and going through my spiritual awakening and this ascension process, and seeing that I was in very specific frequencies at that moment in time when I had no idea that this whole life path existed. I just thought I was going through a real tough time, and, you know, I didn't eat for long periods of time, like incredibly long periods of time. And I just thought, this is my body reacting to that. But I think I know I was in different vibrations elsewhere too. And I was harboring all of this dense energy so that I could transmute it for the collective. This is something that I came here and chose to do as my expression of being here, as a galactic expression. This is what I chose this lifetime. And it was incredibly eye-opening to see that I turned all of that expression into something as being the Grim Reaper, because I knew that there was something else going on with me. And I did feel like there was this weight on me at all times. And it's interesting because I tried to make some notes for before sitting down, and I realized that when I went through my schooling, I went to Catholic schooling, for those that might not know, and I wasn't Catholic in my expression. That was where I ended up, and I remember not feeling or fitting right in that space. And it was when I started to understand that this path wasn't for me, that I sought something else. And the moment that I reached out for Lucifer's expression, I know that they came as a strong holding for me to be able to work through everything that I was experiencing in the here and now. In that moment for me, they were still a lifeline to me somewhere, and they were an expression to me that took me on so many different paths of this expression. And it's difficult to put it all into a vibration of understanding, because when I was going through it, there were so many things that happened, you know, self-harm, all of the rest of it. And it felt like utter chaos. But I had to have this strong essence and fight somewhere still. And I always did. And it's interesting because I realized that I was struggling so much within myself a lot of my lifetime, and some might not be able to have understood that about me. I really came with like such a poker face. Still got one of those to some degree that teams of like, tell me off for behind the scenes. And I want to say that in that time, I felt like I didn't think I was going to make it. I promise you, everyone, there were certain moments in my journey that I just thought, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't know why I'm still here. And I didn't want to make it. I truly had given up on life, on expression, but there was still just this churning and burning that always managed to keep me in the right spaces, put me in touch with the right people, get the right help that I needed. So I'm very grateful that I had, an incredibly supportive family at that time. And it's interesting now because it's like that lifetime didn't exist for me, and I almost feel bad because a lot of my family remember all of this about me, but I don't remember it to a degree that I perhaps should. And this is also another expression that Teams of Light wanted me to bring forward. When you are done with a lesson, it is completely done. You get to let go of it. So to remember that too, and there are still aspects of that come forward, that step forward, and it's been a whole journey with my body as an expression, which I'm going to share a little bit more in a few moments. But I wanted to bring forward this expression of I had to keep my body at such an empty vessel, such an empty vibration, to be able to harbor all of this dark energy for such a long time and transmute it somewhere. So my life process has been being filled up with all of this energy and transmuting it into light through my own physical vessel, and now coming through the other side of that. And this has been something that I've been cycling back around to in my ascension process, and truly understanding that when I started to awaken, I was just pulling all of this dense energy out of me. Once I started to train as a Reiki master practitioner, once I started to understand my energy, I'd be literally, trigger warning again, everyone, I would just be mouth wide open, literally purging all of this energy out. And when I was doing this expression, I remember this is exactly how I felt with my head over a ball at certain other moments in my life. And I thought, I was getting rid of dense energy somewhere, and I didn't know what that was, where it was coming from, but I thought this is what it was. It was like a vibration, and I just felt like it just has to get out. It has to get out. I remember being certain points of my journey of just thinking there's nothing left inside of me physically, but I feel like I need to get something out. And this was this vibration that I chose here. I came here to do. I came here to have this experience. I came here to be this being for humanity. And now looking back on it, it's incredibly eye-opening, but I wanted to put it out there. Teams of Light wanted me to put it out there as a thought form for some to perhaps understand their process and their journey. And it's interesting now looking back and having, experiences through a different lens with my family. And I never saw what I looked like back then. I never saw how thin I was. I just wasn't in that vibration to be able to see that. I was very much in the grips of these EDs, and it's taken me some time to truly accept myself, truly accept my body, and it's still a process that I go through, everyone. And the physical changes that you have to go through when you go on the ascension process, when you have a spiritual awakening, I think isn't spoken about enough, and it's definitely something I'm going to speak about at a deeper capacity. But I think I was having to build up to be able to be speaking about it in such a way. And I want to say that at certain moments in this path and in this journey, back when I was in my EDs, it was like I didn't even like to look at the flesh on my bones. It was very strange to try and put into words, and I now see it's because my vibration wasn't in sync with this human vessel, because the energy was just so dense. I was a 90s baby, so we're in these real thick dense energy, and I was a part of that. My whole entirety of my life has been getting out of that vibration. There was a layer of MK Ultra and all of this expression. There's a layer of the reptilian order and all of this expression. There's a layer of the darkness and all of that sort of stuff that I was living in all of these expressions. And I remember very specifically, it's something that my mother brings up often, is that this time when she was laying with me in bed, and this would happen a lot, she would sleep with me because she was absolutely terrified that I might pass in my sleep. Like, honestly, everyone, that was the point that I got to in my expression. It was very, 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 very dark times for me, very dark times and harrowing times for my family. So I've lived, I've lived quite a dark existence up until this point, everyone, which I think might shock some people. And even to myself, I feel like somewhere I haven't seen it as quite dark as it is. And I think Teams of Light have really been trying to get me to see the true reality of my existence here, and how deeply I've been embedded into all of this the entirety of my life. But I feel like I didn't even live this lifetime. It's really strange. And even creating last week's video for you all with exiting addiction, it feels like some of those times didn't even exist. And I have to remind myself that I did go through that, which is another aspect of understanding. When a new soul signature steps in, it's like those memories are gone. It's like I can't remember some of those times. And I think that there is divine purpose within that. But once you receive a lesson and it's done, you know, you're on to the next. But I remember my mother saying that, you know, there was a time when she was with me and she felt like something was over me and sniffing my body, and we spent some time trying to comb through what that meant. But I knew for the entirety of that time, when I was so dark in my expression, I felt like I was being watched. I felt like I was being watched. I felt like I was being preyed upon, and I felt like I could feel just this presence with me and just holding me down, pulling me down. And I now understand that, you know, this is why I did have Lucifer as a strongholding for myself back then, because I saw them as a light for me somewhere. And I saw them as a fatherly figure that I didn't have in my expression. And me and my father have had quite a difficult lifetime. Some of you will know this. I've already shared this in other videos, because we've had incredibly dense previous lives together. And this is very much connecting to Adolf Hitler and the aspects of the war and that expression. So we've been living a very toxic expression with each other for much of this life. And you know, he didn't really know how to handle me as soon as I became a teenager, and that's been a whole, you know, personal expression within that space. But I remember that I felt like I didn't have a father figure for a lot of my life. And, you know, I'm grateful to have many strong women in my life that, you know, stepped up to that plate and became that for me. And, you know, I've had to become incredibly resilient, which is why I think sometimes, you know, when I share things with people, they're quite shocked at everything that I have experienced this lifetime, because, you know, I always try to have a smile on my face. I always try to be as kind and as gracious as I could to other people. But behind the scenes, I was always fighting something that I just couldn't understand. And I think this is why I came so tentatively to the space of delving into the darkness again, because I knew that I'd been there. I knew that I'd been there for a real long time, and I was trying to pull myself out of that. And this has been the entirety of my expression over here on the Light Renegades, is really sinking into those depths again and starting to understand them, starting to understand my shadow, and pulling myself back into a space of the light and what that means for me. And I want to say that when you decide to partake in an expression of a spiritual awakening, I say it's a choice. I didn't feel like I had a choice in this at the time, in the way that it happened. The body goes through such expansive changes and such violent changes. At least for myself, I've had quite a violent awakening. It felt like my bones are breaking. It felt like my mind was just completely slipping into a space that I didn't even know possible. You know, I've had quite a physical expression in all of this, and, you know, I wish I had someone to kind of tell me that everything was okay. And I want to say that sometimes now, when I look back on the experiences that I did have back then, I now see that there was a real spiritual aspect to all of that. So I'm sharing this today to some that might have been quite a strange experience with themselves, with their body, and what that's meant, and might have been dealing with, you know, body dysmorphia somewhere in some way and some expression, but it's felt quite dark for you. I want to say perhaps you've been sinking into this expression of, you know, transmuting this dense energy for other spaces, roles and times, and obviously, of course, for yourself, it might be part of your expression of why you are here. But I want to say that when I started to gain traction in my spiritual practice, when I started to gain traction in my energy practice, of when I started to really sink into my energy and what it meant, and I started to purge out all of this darkness, that's when I started to feel lighter in my vibration. That's when I started to feel like I could partake in, you know, engaging in more aspects of eating more and experiencing food in a pleasureful way again. And it's been quite the journey for myself to really flip that script on that, and to really appreciate my body, self, and soul here. And I want to say honestly, everyone, it's only been in the past year that I've truly been able to ground into this expression of truly experiencing and loving this physical body. And it's been quite a time knowing that I'm, you know, multidimensional, played in the most part of my aspects here, but so much more, and then having to get used to this physical body. And I want to say it wasn't until maybe only a few weeks ago that the script flipped for me in this expression. I was in ceremony, cacao Hanang ceremony, and Sanang ceremony, and a lady put a copper blanket on my body, and that was when I felt the physical vibration shift, and I thought, oh, it's my physical vessel that allows me to have these energetic experiences. And, you know, all this time that I've had being an energetic worker, I felt like I'd finally understood, you know, it was the physical body that allows me to have these expressions and these sensations. So I've really been coming back to my physical body and, you know, making some different shifts to my expression, and, you know, how I partake in nutrition and what I've been partaking in terms of my health and my well-being. And, you know, that changes as you get older too. And I was really having to take a look at where I am in my physical journey as a human being, but also understanding what my body needs at an energetic standpoint. And there's been flips and switches along all of that path. And, you know, perhaps this is something that I'll go into at much more depth at a later date. I think, yeah, I'm being told that I will. So there'll be more videos on that, everyone. But I want to say, it's so important to love yourself wholly and truly, and whatever state your body is in. There's been some expressions that, would have taken me to the absolute depths of my everything. And, there was a time in this journey where I put on a lot of weight because I was really having to ground some energy here that was quite expansive. And at certain points, teams of light will guide me to eat a little bit more, a little bit less. And there was all manner of expressions that have come in with that. So it's been quite a nuanced expression for me, and having to heal the past as well as in the present time with all of that. But when I started to tap into my feminine energy, that's when my body completely started to take a completely different turn, and I started to have these curves that I've never had this entirety of my life. And I thought, oh, this is what it's meant to step into my divine feminine energy. And I feel like that's what happened when I hit puberty. There was this rush of energy, and I just went, no. I wasn't ready for it, and I wasn't ready for it. This has been my life path, but now that I can see it so clearly, it's quite it's quite insane actually to understand it at an energetic standpoint. So for those that might be, I guess, perhaps struggling with yourself, your body, the way that you look, this has definitely been the entirety of my life path. And, that delves into a lot of things and triggers that happened within my life that was completely difficult to experience. A lot of bullying in my lifetime, within my own household as well as outside. So it's been an interesting space. It's been an interesting space getting to know this body, to love this body. And, every day I have to tell myself that, I'm beautiful in my expression and I love being here, because sometimes it gets quite dark and harrowing still on this path, and I have to bring myself back to this expression of, however I am in whatever given moment is the beauty that exists right in the here and now. So I want to say that to anyone that might be struggling at this time, exactly as you are. If there's changes that you want to make, perhaps understand why you want to make those changes within self, and specifically physically too. And really comb back the expression of why are you here, what are you experiencing, and going back to the core reasons as to why you might be experiencing what you have. And this goes across the board, not just physically, not just talking in the realms of EDs, but anything that is going on here. There is always a lesson. The minute you can bring it back into a lesson, the minute you get to catapult forward and say, hey, like, I've learned the lessons here, on to the next. And once you do that, you can forget the past. And there are some things that still circle around that we need to deal with. These are real deep core wounds, perhaps for ourselves and our life paths and our legacy and our DNA and our ancestry, all of those things. But there's always a pathway that is leading you towards the light at all times. So really truly think of that. Really truly think of why you perhaps have been dealing with some real deep and dark shadowy aspects of self, whether this has been EDs, whether this has been addictions, afflictions, vices, whatever it has been, struggles, whatever that looks like to you, small or large, gambling, whatever that is, insert anything here. Why is that? What is happening for you? What has been happening energetically? And if you would like support in your spaces, please know I'm so here for that. And if I can't help you specifically, I'll make sure that I put you into contact with someone that might be able to. But I want to say that it's so important to look after your mental mind as well as your physical body, but most importantly, your energetic body. Once I started to understand that the energetic body existed, that's when everything else became so much more easier for me to overcome. And I want to thank, it was that therapist that I didn't even know that's what she was doing, was turning everything into a physical manifestation of this energy outside of self. And the minute that I started to do that, the minute that I was able to truly understand what had been happening for me and put to bed some aspects and really, step forward in my journey lighter of foot. And this is still something that I'm working on behind the scenes every day. Every day is a new day. Every day is a new challenge, everyone. And, we are always striving to be the best version of ourselves. And I think we have to look at that too, in terms of what that means, like striving for what's the end goal. And we're definitely put in a space of society and media and culture. And I thought back to this size zero that we lived through back in the 90s, and look where we are now. It's a completely different expression of what is popular in the culture. And it blows the mind. And I think I was really set up to fail somewhere in my expression in my life and the time that I was born. And I know that that's been by pure design. But it's interesting to see it all play out, and the reasons why it all played out, and seeing that I was just sucked into this media culture of what was supposed to be desirable at that time. And I've started to really look at my ancestry and understand the way that my body is exactly how my mother's body is somewhere, my grandmother's body is somewhere. And that's made me really appreciate myself and my body and my physical vessel so much more. I think this is my ancestry. My body is exactly the way it is because of my DNA, and I need to appreciate that. I need to respect that, and I need to really attune into that space. And I think this might be to some that are still, struggling in these spaces. Don't aspire to be a different body type, but it isn't your body type. You have to really appreciate everything that you have and work within the constraints of what you do have. It's always okay to have body goals. This is something that I've been working on within self, in a more healthy dynamic for me. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to be healthier because I wasn't healthy. I wasn't strong. Somewhere I was, quite frail in my existence. My energetic body was ramping up and having all of this dense energy, but my physical vessel wasn't strong. I was meek and I was weak as a person. I didn't speak up, and all of those things, it all comes in tandem. And the minute that I started to be on this path, I felt like I had to be stronger. I had to be heavier. But there has been some aspects where I have been having to fast, and that's been a more healthy expression for me. I've been able to be in that space, so I want to say, please make sure that you're doing, what is healthy for you. If you feel like you're sipping back into aspects that aren't healthy, if that's a trigger for you, you need to stay clear of that. I've been on my own personal path with that, and I seem to be okay within that expression. But I really tune into what my body needs, and like intuitive eating for me is a massive expression for me. So if you'd like to delve into a little bit more about that, in a personal one-to-one, I'm totally here for that, because I think it's something that gets missed a lot. And specifically if you've had troubles with your physical appearance, and I want to say EDs in the past, it can be quite triggering, this path of ascension. And I had to gain a lot of weight and some expressions, and at one moment at that time, that would have been something that would completely have shattered my my thought processes, and I would have felt completely in despair. And I realized I had to reach those points of trigger from my 3D self then to be able to be in the balanced state that I am in the here and now. And that's been a whole process within itself. But I think I could talk about this for a real long time, everyone, and apologies, it's been here, there, and everywhere. Teams of Light have been trying to remind me things as I've been speaking, so there's been a little bit of channeling here as well. But I wanted to share this. Teams of Light wanted me to share this as something that we have to go through. Physical ascension symptoms are very real, very true. It's been crystals that have really helped me, intuitive eating that's been helping me, and really grounding in to my energetic body, but also my physical body, and moving my body when I need to. That's been the most predominant thing that has helped me, is just moving the physical vessel when I needed to, and doing a really intense workout, making sure that I'm being slow with myself when I need to, and really tuning into what my body needs at any given moment. And that changes specifically when you're a woman in your cycle, and going through the processes of leaving your cycle too. You have to be really in tune with what you need, and all of those aspects, being a mother and all of those things, and specifically the masculine energy too in that space, and really having to balance those things out. So I want to say, to bring into land, think about where you are right now in your journey within yourself, your physical vessel, your body, your mind. What is it that you might need to be changing? My process has completely changed in the most recent weeks, and I just didn't see it coming, but I think, oh, okay, this makes the most amount of sense to me now. So perhaps you need to change things. Perhaps you need to have a different routine for self, and we're always evolving, we're always changing, and so many shifts have been happening energetically out there. This gets played back to you. This is something that your body physically experiences. So make sure that you are looking after yourself and resting when you need to, pushing yourself when you need to, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever that is. But most importantly, feel. I realized that I was running from feeling for the majority of my life, in all manners of space and time. This is why, I partook in expressions of alcoholism, drugs, all of that sort of stuff, because I felt too much. And this is something that I shared, I'm going to share in a video that I'll post for you all at the end of the week. And I shared something about the point of creation being the same point of mania. And I think I very much fell into that frequency for a lot of my life. I'm a very creative person. I didn't see myself as such, but I'm now starting to understand that it was this point of creation that felt overwhelming to me, because I felt such a rush, because it's in our inherent genes, it's in our inherent ideologies to create as a being, and specifically as a woman. So I was running away from my feminine energy. It felt more safe to me to be living in my masculine energy, and I had to be in my masculine energy somewhere, because I didn't have safety around me. And this has been a whole process of this whole journey. This is what has been bringing me out to be more in my divine feminine energy, and to find the balance between the masculine and feminine within that. And I have shared a workshop in that space, so if you would like to delve a little bit more into that, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can find that in the community tab. I did post it over here, so you might have to go back and find that, but you can just email me and ask to receive that replay, because it was quite a potent expression at that time, and I knew that so many were going to be receiving that at a later date. So think about yourself, your physical vessel, what you've been experiencing, perhaps ascension symptoms that you might need help with, and make sure that you're looking after your energetic body. And if you don't know what that means, start doing some research from a Reiki master. That might be something that you want to be partaking in as a part of your own spiritual journey, looking into different energy practices, how to work with that. I do a lot of Pilates. I like to do a lot of understandings myself within my own vibration of connecting with music as well, everyone. What else has helped me? Being more slow and more just present in my everyday life. And I want to say that I haven't quite found the yoga bug, although I do partake in some aspects of yoga, but I think that's going to be something for a future date for me. But I want to say that me just listening and tuning in with what my body needs, I've been guided to the best aspects for me at different moments in time. And for a majority of this lifetime, I've just had to do quite vigorous workout sessions because I needed to get rid of this excess energy, this excess creative force, because there was just so much brewing within me, but I just wasn't in the understandings of being able to harness that energy for myself. So when I did become a Reiki master, Reiki practitioner, that's when everything started to be calmer for me. I thought, oh, this was the peace and the calm that I've been seeking the entirety of my life. I didn't know my energetic body existed, which is why I was struggling. You know, I went through these expressions. You can all hear it through this expression of why that all happened. But that was when I started to feel at peace, understanding my energetic body and coming into my grounding spaces, being out in nature specifically. And Qigong has also helped me as well, moving the body in a very fluid manner. I didn't know that this is what I was doing, but I found myself doing this in my own practices, in my own spaces, in my own time. But you'll be guided to what's going to be best for you. But if you would like help understanding what your daily practices should be for you, that's completely why I'm here. I can channel your teams of light for you. We can come into a space of communicating with them. That's definitely something that I do within my Reiki practices. We do a full body MOT. We look in the insides and outsides of you and why things might be the way they are, some energetic blockages, and what that might mean for your emotional standpoint too. And I realized that I was harboring all this dense energy for a long time, and once that energy started to be purged out of me, all of this emotion came up, which is what so many of you have seen over here on the Light Renegades, which has just been an outpouring of all of this emotion that I had stored for a very long time. And I remember therapists saying to me, you stop breathing here. And I started to partake in breathwork, which has allowed for me to have more space in that. So thank you so much to the dear soul that might watch this too. You completely changed my life. You know, this is something that I've shared with you behind the scenes, but I'm eternally grateful for you, another soul member that stepped forward just when I needed them most. So I partake in breathwork daily, and this has really helped me tune into my expression, tune into my vibration at a different capacity, and really bring myself into my physical body. But coming back to my physical body is definitely still something that I'm working on behind the scenes, my own personal journey. Everyone, it's been quite a time for me, you know, understanding all the realms that I'm connected to, but really having to ground in, but also bringing my physical vessel into that aspect too, because it's a lot of spaces that I deal with just a lot of energy. So you have to know what's best for you, but you will fine tune that when the time is right. But if you would like help in that space, please do not hesitate to reach out. And honestly, I feel like I keep talking about all of this for a long time, so I hope this has been helpful for some. I feel like I've just been speaking a lot, but I think I'm trusting that everything that I've shared is going to be for someone somewhere. And if it's not, you know, thank you for partaking and, you know, experiencing all of this with me. But please do get that help that you need. I really needed to go to therapy at certain moments in my life. So if you're feeling that call, you know, it's always important that you seek medical assistance in all of this and all of these spaces. That's why I say, make sure you're looking after your mental mind, your physical body, but also your energetic body that we are not taught exists. And when I found that was when everything shifted for me. So maybe this is something you want to partake in, whether it's me, whether it's someone else out there, just tune in and take that lesson. But that's all for myself today. Oh, meditating often too. That's also something that really, really helps me. But I think there's going to be videos and all of that to come. If there are some things that you would like me to delve a little bit deeper on, please do not hesitate to reach out to me personally. I'll leave them in the comments as well, everyone. But that's all for myself today and my expression. Thanking teams of light and for all of you witnessing. Take care.